بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين لله تبارك وتعالى. So we relate with the continuous chain back to the great Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Inshallah, those of us, so you cannot miss, and maybe we should start. Can someone, maybe sister, since you're here, Maryam, and who was that among the brothers? One of you is Abdurrahim, one of them. Abdurrahim, can you come down? Or Jamila. Get everybody's name from the sisters who attended and brothers. We're going to mark every attender who's attended. Those of you who attend all of the sessions, I'll give you my chain of narration when we finish the text. And no one has it. So no one was like, you will miss something good, inshallah. I studied this text many times, but 3 times with one of the biggest scholars in Damascus. So, inshallah, I'll share that chain with you. And some of the other routes, inshallah. But when we finish, those who attended all the sessions, inshallah. So, with our chain of narration, we relate back to the Imam and the Hafiz and the Faqih, Abu Ja'far Ahmad ibn Salama al-Tahawi al-Misri, rahimahullah ta'ala. He said that this is an elucidation of the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah according to the madhab of the scholars of the religion, Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man ibn Thabit al-Kufi, and Abi Yusuf Yaqub, the son of Ibrahim al-Ansari, and Abu Abdullah Muhammad, the son of Al-Hasan al-Shaybani. May Allah be pleased with all of them. And this is what they believed among the fundamentals of the religion, and they submit that to the Lord of the worlds. How many of you are prepared to memorize in Arabic?
Everybody in?
We can be honest, because I would do Arabic and English, but if no one's going to memorize, it's showing off, and I ain't interested. If you're going to memorize, so are we committed to memorize? All right, let's say this. Those who are committed to memorize in Arabic, we'll put a paper, give them, and just give your name and your email and your phone number to Abdurrahim, and I'll do a special session with you where we'll work in Arabic. Right? We're going to memorize, but that's the condition. If I tell you you're not memorizing, you're out. Right? So that way we don't waste people's time. Right? So, the explanation of this, the author mentioned that this is an explanation, an elucidation of the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, or Aqeedah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So when it says an explanation, what is meant here is that this is detailed. It's not so summarized where it needs a lot. As it is, it's sufficient explanation for you of the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So if you just read this text with no explanation, it's sufficient for you to know the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Because he said, this is an elucidation, bayan. That means you're explaining something, right? It's not something that's so brief where it needs more. In and of itself, is satisfactory to know the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Aqeedah is the creed in Islam. And it is the most important subject of all the Islamic subjects. There is no subject in Islam more important than ilm al-aqeedah, the science of aqeedah. Because aqeedah represents the foundations of Islam, right? And it is concerning with the belief in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the belief in the prophets, alayhimus salatu wassalam, and that which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam conveyed about the matters of the hereafter, right? So whenever you're talking about Aqeedah and its various names, so you have Al-Aqeedah, Al-Tawheed, Usul al-Din, Ilm al-Kalam, all of that is the same science. So you can say Al-Aqeedah, Al-Tawheed, Usul al-Din, Ilm al-Kalam, all of that is the same subject matter. So that deals with the issues of the creed, the beliefs, has nothing to do with rules of the religion, and has nothing to do with spirituality in terms of as a science. It's connected because the Islamic science relate to one another. But it is a complete separate science. It has its scholars and it has its books. Many people, they don't realize this. Because we have deteriorated as a nation in our learning of Islamic sciences, they make, I won't say that because it can sound offensive. They make the books easy for us. We have a bunch of how-to-do books. We don't learn sciences anymore, right? So what do I, he's looking like, what is he talking about? Whenever you see these little muqtasarat, these summaries, right? Whether it's, they have everything combined, a little bit of Aqeedah, a little bit of fiqh, a little bit of tasawwuf. That's not in the science. That's for beginners to introduce you to something. That's not the science. So, if you have a section on Aqeedah, that's just to get you familiar with the science of Aqeedah. You have a little section on fiqh. That's a science of fiqh. You have a little section on tasawwuf. That's the science of it's introducing you. It's like an entry, a doorway to that. It's not the science. Do y'all understand? So we have whole books that's just related to Aqeedah. Volumes. Right? Not just some all summarized books. Volumes that's just related to the creed. Right? Just give you this book. It's small. This book itself is really not even 20 pages. But when the scholars explain, it can go to volumes. In the field, it's just talking about Aqeedah, right? So, when we talk about the creed, remember it's a field of study. We say a science, a field of study. When I say a field of study, it has its own scholars. That's their specialty. That's what they deal with. And it has its own books, right? That's a science. So we're getting, for this book, a clear explanation of the science of Tawheed in a summarized yet comprehensive manner. It's summarized, it's small, but it's very comprehensive. So it covers because it's an explanation. So this is the creed. And the creed is that which you tie your heart to. So that means it must be something that's firmly rooted in the heart. That you have no doubt about these issues. Right? And this is extremely important. That when you learn Aqeedah, you don't learn it as something that a maybe type of mentality, a maybe type of mentality, like it could be right, it could be wrong. This is not these kind of matters. These matters you must firmly believe. and the opposite of them are not permissible to believe. So that which opposes it is not permissible to believe. Now when I say not permissible to believe, this is serious. Because sometimes you can have a belief that is wrong, but it just makes, and I shouldn't say it just makes you, it makes you sinful. It's wrong to believe that. But you're sinning to that, but there are other issues that if you believe them, they take you outside of Islam. So now when I said it's just sinful in comparing to becoming a non-Muslim, I want to make this clear. Just as you entered Islam with words, which are what? Okay. You can go out of Islam with words too. And convictions and actions. Write that down. Just as you came into Islam with words, you can go out with words, beliefs, and actions. Just because you became a Muslim doesn't mean you're going to remain one. So there are words, there are convictions, beliefs, and actions. If you say them, believe them, or do them, they will result in you becoming a non-Muslim. By the consensus of all four schools of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, whether it is the Hanafi school, Maliki school, Shafi'i school, or the Hanbali school, by agreement of all of them, there are words, convictions, and actions that take you out of Islam. So this is not a light matter, right? Now what they are is a whole nother study, but they exist. And so for us, when we're learning Aqeedah, we need to learn it in a way that our heart is firmly attached to it, so that we protect ourselves from its opposite. Y'all follow me? And remind me, make a note for the next class, because I don't want to overload you. So just make notes. I'm going to tell you in every madhab where it's mentioned and what books. I don't want to overload you right now. Since I'm Shafi'i, I'll give you a quick one. In the Shafi'i school, we have a thing, all of the books this is mentioned, but it's more mentioned detail in our bigger books. One of the books is called Rawdatul Talibin by Imam An-Nawawi. Rawdatul Talibin. Imam An-Nawawi, in that book, he mentions this and gives example of each type. Imam An-Nawawi. Everyone knows Imam An-Nawawi, right? Yeah. The 40 Hadith, Riyadh al-Salihin, Al-Adhkar. He has a book called Rawdatul Talibin. In that book, in the section of Ridda, apostasy, he mentions these with examples. This is one of the major books in the Shafi'i school. And since we got Malikis, you will find this in Mukhtasar Khalil, in Shahr Kabir, in all of those books you will find it. Allah. So, the creed is important. It is the first obligation on the Muslim to learn properly their creed. He said it's the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah means the people of the way of the Prophet and the majority. So when he says Al-Jama'ah, we're talking about the majority of the Muslim nation. In terms of belief, all of the majority of the Muslims have the same belief, right? They would never, Muslims, agree on misguidance, period. Especially in terms of the creed. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that is related by Ibn Majah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never allow my nation to agree on misguidance. Never. He will never allow the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to agree on misguidance. So whenever you see differences among them, ikhtilaf, difference of opinion, follow the majority of the nation. Whenever you see differences, that's a scale. You want to weigh something. We got differences. What does the majority of the nation say? Not just you, not just me. What is the majority of the nation? Now, keep in mind, the majority of the nation is represented by its scholars, not common people necessarily. Because common people, they may be right, they may be wrong, they don't know. We're talking about the scholars that represent the common people, right? Whenever they agree on a matter, that matter is a part of our deen, right? Because Allah would not allow them to agree on misguidance, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. So in terms of belief, they stuck to what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam conveyed. Imam al-Tahawi mentioned that this treatise, which is Aqeedah Tahawiyah, is a mentioning of the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, as was expressed by three great Imams, right? Those three great Imams are Imam Abu Hanifa and his two companions, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, and before him, Abu Yusuf, Yaqub ibn Ibrahim al-Ansari. These three Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa was from the Tabi'een, from the students of the Sahaba, and his companions were in the next generation, right, of the followers of the Tabi'een. So they are from whom? The Salaf. That's why I said we get the lessons, huh? I like to engage. I'm not just a lecturer. I want to make sure you with me. Remember I told you, some of you watch online, I said it's much different when we're close to close. I can read you. I can see you. I can see the question marks. Right? Now, we have to engage. Don't be afraid. For us, we have our way of learning, right? And as a people, we are interactive people, right? We don't just listen to the concert and go like this. We're shaking it, right? So we us, be you. I need you to learn. You can't learn faking it. You got to be who you are, right? So those three Imams are from the Salaf, right? So Imam al-Tahawi is saying, this is the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. According to the school, he called them the jurists of the religion, right? The jurists of the religion. Meaning, and to him, they were authorities. I was thinking about this yesterday. You know, al-fiqh is law. You know that, right? So Islamic jurisprudence, when we're talking about following madhabs and all that, that's law. When any one of us have a legal issue, what do we go get?
Law.
No. Lawyers. Whenever we have legal, we don't go get law books. Unless you're in a prison and you like a jailhouse lawyer. Oh, I'm telling you, you can beat that, man. They can give you 20. I know they're going to be 40 listening to them right now. I'm joking.
That's real.
I'm doing right here. I'm doing all mad. I'm going to get you out. I can promise you. That's where you sit down the river.
I'm in the law library.
No, thank you. I'm going to get my lawyer. You know
better than the public defender.
Right. So what I'm saying, though, why you go get a lawyer? Because you're dealing with detailed legal issues. When we study our religion, we're not lawyers. Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, they were lawyers. For your jurists, legal experts. You watch on CNN, they got the black lady Laura Coates now. Y'all watch the news?
No.
Okay, keep not watching the news, trying to be Susie. You better watch the news, all the stuff going on around us. Right? No, seriously. They're trying, I don't want to go on my conspiracy theory. You better watch the news. Close your eyes and just listen. You better watch the news. Seriously, it's stuff happening. Everybody else is watching the news while the world is crumbling and we're not, and it's going to crumble right on us. Pay attention. But anyway, they switched from Chris Como. He got in trouble for his father. But he was a lawyer. His brother. His brother, he was a lawyer too. You notice they switched with another lawyer, black woman. Right? Because they want experts at some of the stuff they're discussing. It's dunya. What about our religion? Right? So, don't approach those great imams with this concept that they have in Arabic, hum rijal wa nahnu rijal. They're men and we're men. As our teachers used to say, no, hum rijal wa antum dhukur. They are men and you are males. There's a difference. Right? You're talking about scholars. Stop looking at them just Abu Hanifa, Shafi, la. These are the top jurists of the religion of Islam. That's not a light statement. They are the best of the inheritors of the Prophet ﷺ. They are the best. Right? They're so good that whole legal schools were built upon their methodology. Right? But with this summarized mind we have, we don't understand the work of these great scholars. They were the top jurists. Under them were super jurists just like them who were their students. So when we talk about those two imams, they were the scholars in Iraq of their time. In Baghdad, in Iraq, in Kufa, in Basra, those imams were the chief judge. Qadi Abu Yusuf was the chief judge of all the judges. Do you understand? This is not do-it-yourself Islam. This was a government running vast land, and they were the top legal experts. Imam Abu Hanifa, he died in prison, right? Because you know why he died? He wouldn't become a judge. He didn't want to be a judge. So they imprisoned him. Not for nothing else. Just we want you to be the judge. Want you to be the chief judge. Imagine the White House does that. I'm just trying to give you a picture. The president does that to a judge, a scholar. I need you to be on the Supreme Court. What does it say about that person in their legal expertise? That they try to force you. But that goes to show you their piety too. I don't want nothing to do with that. Right? That's Abu Hanifa. So when he says this, don't look at it just some names. We're talking about the best of the best in the Islamic world. They said about Imam Abu Hanifa that he could talk to you and convince you, and you can look at a pillar and tell you that pillar's gold, and you would believe it. That's his expertise, right? He wrote a book, Imam Abu Hanifa, in Aqeedah. The book is in Aqeedah, and it's called Al-Fiqh Akbar, the greatest understanding. It's not about fiqh. Imam Abu Hanifa never wrote a book in fiqh. You heard what I said? He never wrote a book in fiqh. All the books he wrote are in Aqeedah. But he's one of the foremost jurists in the nation. But he never wrote a book in fiqh. He dictated to his students, and they wrote books. And his madhab was, but for him, it was Aqeedah. To the extent, he is from Kufa in Iraq. He traveled, as Murtada Az-Zabidi mentioned, he traveled from Kufa to Basra in Iraq. So there were three main big cities in Iraq at that time: Baghdad, Kufa, and Basra. He traveled from Kufa to Basra 20 times. The distance from Kufa to Basra is a 4-day journey. Was no airplanes and was no cars. 4 days to travel that distance. Why did he do it? Because in Basra were groups that had bad beliefs, and he went there to explain the creed of Ahl Sunnah. He did that 20 times. A 4-day journey through the desert, highway robbers, all just to teach the creed. Think about that. And his sheikhs, those he learned as from them, among some of them were the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet. So we're talking about following the Salaf. These are directly connected to the Salaf. And they are from the Salaf. And the Salaf, in the strictest meaning, we gave the long meaning, we said those who lived in the first what? In the strictest meaning, we're going to say the companions, the followers of the companions, and the followers of the followers. That's the strictest meaning you're going to get. And they were from them. You see my point? So Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi is not talking about anybody. So when we're talking about creed, we're talking about the best of the best. Imam Abu Hanifa, that's knowledge. That's effort. Imam Abu Hanifa, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to recite the entire Quran in one rak'ah. Did you hear what I said? Yeah. The entire Quran in one rak'ah. To the extent they called him the peg, like he's just fixed. So was he just knowledgeable? No, he was pious too. He was a worshiper of Allah. They weren't just knowledgeable people. No, they were worshipers. He used to cry so much in prayer, he would wake his neighbors up. They would hear him crying, and they would have mercy for him and wake up. One time a man came to the masjid for Abu Hanifa, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and he was in sujood after Isha. So the man wanted to talk to Imam Abu Hanifa. But he stayed in sujood for so long, the man got tired. He took a leaf and put it on his back. He came back before Fajr, Abu Hanifa was still in sujood. How many of us are anywhere close to that? To be honest. So when they say they're men and we men, look who you're talking about here. Besides being a jurist, besides being a scholar, that was his acts of worship. These are giants. To the extent, the scholars, they call him Al-Imam Al-A'zam, the greatest Imam. Not just Abu Hanifa, la, Al-Imam Al-A'zam. At-Tahawi saying, these are the scholars of the religion. Who is Imam At-Tahawi? Who's saying this? He was Al-Hafidh, which means what? He memorized over 100,000 hadith with their chains of narration. This is important information. Right? Over 100,000 hadith by heart with the chain from himself back to the Prophet ﷺ. All of them. He doesn't like us. When you read the books of Imam At-Tahawi, and he has books in hadith, and books in fiqh, real big books. When you read those books, and we've read them, and they're tiresome for us. Why? Because he doesn't say anything without a chain of narration. Every hadith he quotes, he doesn't say the Prophet ﷺ said. He doesn't do that. He said, I relate from so-and-so, who relate from so-and-so, and who relate from so-and-so, that the Prophet ﷺ said that. And that's one narration. And there's another version that I learned from this route to this route. Every narration like that. This is a person who had 100,000 hadith in his mind, more than that. To the point, when we say Hujjatul Islam, we all think of who? Do you know Imam Tahawi was called Hujjatul Islam? The proof of Islam. That was his level, his rank. His chain, if you want, he got multiple chains. But one you would be familiar with easily. An illustrious chain. Considered a golden chain in his route. He relates from Imam al-Muzani, who was among the main narrators of the school of Imam al-Shafi'i. Al-Muzani is the main student and pusher of the madhab of the Shafi'i school. After the books of Imam al-Shafi'i, al-Um and al-Hujjah, the first book that is taken after that is the Muqtasar of Imam al-Muzani. That's the level in the school. Every book that's built in the school is built after that book. I'm just showing you ranks. That was Imam al-Tahawi's teacher. From al-Shafi'i. And al-Shafi'i, as we know, in a golden chain from al-Shafi'i, Imam Malik ibn Anas, who was the scholar of al-Medina in his time. And Imam al-Tahawi mentions that Imam al-Malik is famous for what book? Al-Muwatta. Come on, hadith people, we went over this already last month. The month before. Y'all should have how many books of hadith?
A lot.
We discussed them. Come on.
20.
Around 20. What's up? This stuff should be popping. It's popping. No, seriously. We're not just talking just to talk. We have to learn. When you're going to go out and you're going to explain, you got people talking about their hadiths, learning people. They got master's degrees in hadith. If you don't know anything, you're going to be lost. You can just say, well, I heard my sheikh say. That's not going to work. It's not at all. Well, I learned. No, you didn't learn anything. It's not going to help us. We have to master. Seriously. When you're dealing with a pandemic, you need the top doctors. You need people to be serious in the field. We're dealing with a pandemic of creed. We have to learn our stuff. Well, Imam Malik, we said Imam al-Shafi'i took from him. Those three Imams that he mentioned at Tahawi, one of them was Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani. He was also a student of Imam Malik. And the Muwatta has many riwayat, more than one. Several riwayat of the Muwatta. Students that took from Imam Malik. Among the most famous of them is the Muwatta by the riwayah of Muhammad ibn Hasan al-Shaybani. What is unique about that riwayah, that narration, that the Muwatta of Imam Malik has the hadith of the Prophet and the Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the opinions of Imam Malik. What Muhammad ibn Hasan al-Shaybani did was when he studied it, he put alongside the opinions of Imam Malik, the opinions of Abu Hanifa, which makes it special. Very important. So we're talking about he got from this route and he got from what? That route. From Imam Malik. And Imam Malik, he was the student of Nafi', the freed slave of Ibn Umar. And Nafi', the student of Abdullah ibn Umar, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ. And that is called in hadith a golden chain from Malik to Nafi, from Ibn Umar to the Prophet ﷺ. Imam al-Bukhari considered these narrations as a golden chain. Golden chain in hadith. Considered the most authentic chain in hadith knowledge. And there are some other chains that scholars mention that they consider golden chains. But when that is mentioned, whenever you say the golden chain in hadith, the dominant names that you're going to get is Malik, from Nafi, from Ibn Umar, from the Prophet ﷺ. And those great Imams are all connected to Imam Tahawi. You follow? I'm not talking about anybody. It's not Bin Baz. No, I'm being sarcastic, but I'm being serious. This is not Al-Albani. This is not Sheikh so-and-so. These are the greatest this nation produced. Because, listen, why am I saying that? Because as we learn, these things, mark them down well. Because you're going to find that you're going to have these same people challenging Imam Tahawi's creed. No, when we learn, you're going to see, I'm going to show you, where they say Imam Tahawi was incorrect in his creed. So here's the point, when you don't understand who they're talking about, it's like, it may sound like authoritative. Say that again? If he didn't know what to believe, we in trouble. With his level, and he ain't know what to believe, and his book is the most famous among the summarized texts of the creed, we're in trouble as Muslims. Right? We're in trouble. That's not a light statement. Like, he's not the prophet, and neither are you. But he's closer to the prophet in every way, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can imagine. So if I'm going to take my chance, I'll be like some of the people said about Imam Malik. I would be more comfortable with Malik's mistakes than your corrections. I would be more comfortable with Imam Malik radiallahu ta'ala and his mistakes than your corrections. Why? It's a vast difference in knowledge, in piety, in everything. Right? So I'm mentioning about these scholars because Imam Tahawi mentioned them. Why he mentioned them? Did he mention them just to say some names? No, they are significant figures in the religion, in how we got our religion. In other words, our religion reached us through them. We wouldn't even know the deen as we know it if it wasn't for their work and their preservation. The same thing I'm telling us to do, they did it. That's how we got it. These are the most authentic routes from the Prophet ﷺ. After the companions, and these are the people. That's what we're talking about. So we're not talking about we are attributing ourselves to something. No, they are them. They are them. This is the Salaf you're talking about. Not someone else. That's them. This is what they believed. It's very important. So he mentioned them. Why? Because Imam Tahawi followed their methodology in the rules of the religion. Because he was Hanafi. So he mentioned what? His route that he learned the knowledge of the religion. And the approach that he's following. So what is he doing? By saying this out the start, he's putting into practice the narration that Imam Muslim mentioned in the introduction of his book Sahih Muslim, from the route of Muhammad ibn Sirin, when he said, "Inna hadha al-ilm deen, fanzuru amman ta'khuduna deenakum." He said, verily, this knowledge you're learning is the religion. So look well from whom your religion. What is he telling you? This is what I'm getting ready to explain to you. The creed of Ahl Sunnah, this is where I got it from. This is my chain. And his knowledge reached them with an unbroken chain. So he's looking well to what? Who we learned the knowledge from. Where do we get it from? Why? because you got to understand the context. Imam al-Tahawi is writing this treatise as an answer to deviant groups that existed in his time, as explaining what is the real creed. So he starts the beginning telling you the correct creed, and then, as we'll see, he ends it talking about what's the wrong creed. He's going to tell you what to believe, and after you learn all the beliefs, he'll say, now this stuff that they talking over there is wrong. You follow? It's very important. So in this text, it's going to tell you the importance of doing what? Standing up for the correct creed. That's what he did. So he follows their methodology. Meaning, excuse me, the expressions that he's going to use is the same expressions that they used. So when you do a comparison of the books of those great Imams and their issues of creed, you're going to see it's synonymous or similar to the way Imam al-Tahawi expressed, because he was Hanafi. As for the meaning of this creed, it is the same of all of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, whether they were Hanafis and Malikis or Shafi'is or Hanbalis. But in terms of creed, so the Ash'aris and the Maturidis are the same with At-Tahawi. So you know, those great scholars, Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, and Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi, they all lived in the same time. So make sure you got the dates. Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi died 321 in Egypt, in Egypt. Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari died 324 in Iraq, Baghdad. And Imam Maturidi, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, he died 333 in the area of Russia, Maturid. So Bukhara, those areas. Beyond the river, what they call it. What's the word for the beyond the river they use? In English, is it what's those ox something? There's a genius. I count on you. No, what they call that area in English?
Starts with a T. It's
okay, all of us need to go learn English. Like, there's a word they use for that area, but it's from the area, which is modern day Russia, Soviet Union, Afghanistan area.
Or something.
Yeah, the stands.
Yeah, those areas. It's that area, right? So you just get to know where it is in our modern area.
Imam, is there any way that they're all connected? Where are they? Those three all connected?
By a sanid, but they never met.
Okay.
Which shows you Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. They never met each other. But there is a great scholar. His name is Tajuddin as-Subki. He died in the year 771. He's Egypt, Shafi'i scholar. He wrote a book called Tabaqat al-Shafi'at al-Kubra, which is the biography of the great Shafi'i scholars. He was a judge in Egypt and in Syria, Sham areas. Big scholar. He wrote,
What was that date again?
771 after Hijrah. So he lived just after Ibn Taymiyyah. His father was Taqiyuddin as-Subki, the great Mujtahid scholar. But Tajuddin as-Subki, he said, that which is contained in the creed of Imam al-Tahawi is in agreement with the creed of Imam al-Ash'ari. It's the same creed, right? Except in a few issues. And that's the issues between al-Ash'ariyah and Maturidiyah, which are detailed issues, not foundational issues. So the creed is the same. in this explanation, I need you to mark all those names I'm giving you. Right? These are important figures. Many of us, we haven't been exposed to these things. Let's get exposed, right? People tell us stuff, but we want to really, because when it comes to really discuss it, we're going to have to do some research, right? So we need to know authorities, from where the knowledge is taken, right? Not just we quoting. All of us in our time are transmitters, not originators. Put that. All of us in our time are transmitters, not originators. If someone's making up their own stuff, run. I'm like that. This has never been done before me. No, that's dangerous. You should only be relating what was conveyed. That's how we know it's sound. It's conveyed. And you should be a good narrator. Maybe we may be happy about that. But if you're making it up as you go along, that's scary. Right? Someone should be before you who said similar. And someone before them, and before them back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? We're not talking about formulating stuff and packaging. That's always going to be needed. You know what I mean? Like Imam al-Haddad said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that Allah always gives knowledge to people in a form best suited for the time. It's not new knowledge, just the way it's presented. You know, I realized this is a mistake that we made. I remember when we first started teaching, we used to stick to the text. And we would be talking about stuff that nobody understands. Way over everybody's head. But we just reading and translating. Not thinking of who we're talking to, not thinking of context, none of that. Read, translate, read, translate. And people don't know. Why? They don't know Arabic. So we give an hour class, we spend a half an hour talking in Arabic that no one understands, and another half an hour translated and wonder why they never understood. We distracted them. They could have learned an hour's worth of stuff because they understood nothing we was talking about. And then, if you conveyed it in a way that relates to them, they're engaged. Now they learned. Then later, you can go give them the technical stuff, right? All you want to know is how to work the internet, right? You don't want to learn how we formulated it, do you? Show me the codes. Does anyone say that? No, just show me how to get online. I need to do my Amazon shopping. I don't need to know if you press this key because of the coding here, this key. You nobody want to know that? That's what we was doing in teaching. Teaching you in a way you ain't interested. And then the others came, gave us easy Islam for dummies, and everybody became Wahhabi. Because we wasn't wise. I'm just being honest. We wasn't wise. So and I told one of my teachers this, I said, listen, I'm getting it, but if I tell this to my people, they're not going to understand. You're trying to give me Aqeedah and you're teaching me grammar. They don't even speak Arabic. Why are we learning grammar? It has no significance to them at all. It relates to someone that's an expert, but to us, wasted time, right? But there are some things that are important. Learn to express that. All of us need to do that. So you're going to take this knowledge and you're going to go talk to your relatives. They don't know who Tajuddin Suki is. They might not know even who Tahawi is, but teach them the creed. For you, you need to know that. You understand my point? At the end of the day, you busy quoting all these scholars and that person's walking away talking about Allah sitting in heaven. You failed miserably because you complicated something that didn't need to be complicated. Right? But some of us, need to what? be at that level to go in more details. Where it's necessary. When it's not necessary, don't go. Tell you. So, why did he name them the scholars of the religion? Because he mentioned them. He's a scholar. Why he mentioned those scholars? It is because Imam al-Tahawi, when he looked at their schools in the foundations of the religion and the branches in the religion, he found that their approach matched the Quran, the famous Sunnah, and the consensus of the companions, and the intellectual proofs. I need you to write all four of those. Imam al-Tahawi mentioned them. He called them the jurists of the religion. So he mentioned them. Why? When he looked at their school, their methodology, which is called a madhab, right? Their methodology. He found that methodology in agreement with the Quran, with the famous, well-known Sunnah, with the consensus of the scholars, and the intellectual proofs and evidences. Four things. Y'all ready? So what do we usually hear? Quran and Sunnah. He didn't just look at that. He said the Quran, the Sunnah. What type of Sunnah?
Famous.
Well known. As Sunnatu al-Mashhura. Right? This is important. Why is it important? When we're talking about Aqeedah, you can't just use anything as a proof. According to them, they took as a proof in the creed evidence from the Sunnah that was either what we call mutawatir or mashhur, famous, or by multiple groups of narration and multiple groups of narration. Here I gotta get a little technical so you can follow me. When we say something is mutawatir, or multiple chains of transmission, that is how the Quran was conveyed to us. From whole groups of whole groups of whole groups. All of the Quran is mutawatir. Right? That means we didn't get the Quran from one person. The Quran came from multiple routes at each level of its transmission. Are y'all following this? Please, I'm not trying to entertain you. If you ain't following me, stop. Say, I know what you're talking about. It's very important. So that means, let's just give for example, at every level of transmission, from the Prophet to his companions, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the companions, there were at least 10 or more narrators of the Quran. At the level of the followers of the companions, 10 or more. In the Quran, you're talking about a whole lot, right? All the way down to it reaches us. That's how the Quran is conveyed. Only some hadith are conveyed like that, not all. There are some hadith that are conveyed like that. Then there are others that are 3 or more, but not at the level of, say, 5 or 6 or 7. At each level of its transmission. All right, quickly. Y'all follow that? When it's a narration like that, it's called mashhur. It's called famous. Well known.
You said 3 or more.
3 or more, yes. Oh, so in Aqeedah, when it comes to the creed, the evidences that we use for it, the proofs from the Sunnah, should be at the level of mashhur or greater, which is mutawatir. Everyone follows that? Okay, who's going to repeat it? Since we said we follow, someone's got to repeat. One from the men and one from the women.
You want the definition of mutawatir?
Even if you look at your note, I just want you to be able to explain what I said. So if you can give a definition, that's great. But just explain so I make sure you understand.
As far as the transmitters, right? Transmitters, right? You said that mutawatir is multiple ways of transmission.
At
Each level.
each level of the transmission.
But when it's mashhur, is it still binding like mutawatir? Or it's not as binding as
No, it's not as binding as mutawatir.
Okay.
But for the creed, it should be at that level.
Okay.
This is important. Mark this down, because a lot of the narrations that the innovators in creed use from the hadith don't reach the level of mashhur.
Yes.
So it's not really a proof in creed. But they will use it as a proof in creed.
Because I even noticed that he said when he did ta'wil, he said he would use the transmissions more so than the other transmissions.
Because this is creed.
Yeah.
We're not talking about fiqh. We're talking about creed. It's very, later this is going to kick in. That's why I don't want to just zoom by. Because when we're talking, I'm going to come back to this when we talk about more detailed issues.
Mashhur, double H. Double Mashhur.
Right.
So when he used the hadith about the woman,
We don't want to go into those details. Stick where I'm at. Don't unwrap the candy before it's time to eat. Go ahead. I need you to understand the case first.
clean, no problem.
In Aqeedah, the evidence should be at the level of mashhur or greater at each level of the transmission.
Right. Good.
Right? Point blank.
Okay.
Wait, so now I'm misunderstanding.
What do
So
you
you said, I
misunderstand?
thought you said that a mutawatir hadith is a hadith that has 10 or more.
I just gave as a number. It could be beyond 3 or 4, 5, and mutawatir is not a fixed number. It is, mutawatir is when there are so many transmitters
Right, that
at each level that it's possible that they came together in a lie.
impossible.
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 Should be,
Slip of the
I
tongue.
agree.
Ooh, got him! That's what I said. Oh yeah,
Should be at the level of
that's what is understood, right? So when something is mutawatir, it's not necessarily a fixed number. It is above 3 for sure, right? Because that's the level of mashhur. So when there is such a number that we, and you know what I mean by number? That means routes of the narration, different chains of narration. So many of them at each level, that's considered, they didn't come together to form a line. That's mutawatir.
Oh, okay.
You follow me?
Yeah, she want to ask a question, but I just want you to repeat the definition one more time.
When you say at each level, what do you mean specifically?
Okay. This is good. This is very important. Whenever you're talking about hadith or the Quran and the hadith are not conveyed by books. Keep that in mind. The Quran and the hadith are not conveyed by books. They're conveyed by people through books. There's a difference. In general, Islam is not taken from the pages of books. It's taken from the hearts of people, living scholars. Right? So we don't just rely on the book. The book is the secondary source of knowledge. The scholar is the primary source. So even if we read books, that's not our reliance. As you can see, y'all read this book, right? You look at this line. You gonna come up with all this stuff from reading on your own? Absolutely not. You're only gonna get that from living teachers, right? Even if you're smart, you ain't bringing up all that, right? You gotta have some connection to living teachers, right? So, since it's by living people, that means Allah revealed the Quran to Jibreel, right? Jibreel conveyed it to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ conveyed it to the companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum. The companions conveyed it to the next generation. And the next generation, and all the way to it reached us. Right? So at each level, there is this,
Number.
from my teachers, all of that rank, a number. The rank above that, a number. The rank above that, a number. Right? All the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. That's called a level. So the level of the companions, the level of the followers. So just look at it by generation for your sake. We're in what generation? What generation? What century we in right now? Islamic century. 15. So that's one level. 14, another level. 13, another level. 12, another level. You follow?
Gotcha.
Now, it don't have to be 100 years. It could be short in the chain. It could be less than that. But I'm just giving you a way that you can understand what is meant by levels. Right?
I have a question.
So
I know we not used to learning like this. Many of us talk about it, but actually didn't experience it. We want us to taste it. Right? We want to get to the point when we talk, we can name all of our teachers. Right? I know my teachers, who my teachers' teachers were, who their teachers' teachers were, who their teachers' teachers was, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ, and can name them. And we want to get to the point where we can do it from our minds. Without no book. That's where we need to get. I'll name my teachers from my mind. I don't need the book. I'll tell you my teachers, their teachers, their teachers, from my mind. All of us need to get like that. That is our lineage in the religion. People took pride in knowing their family, right or wrong. My wife, she knows grandpa, granddad, great-grandpa, uncles, cousins, father's cousins. I be saying, like, how do you know all these people? They take honor and pride. Some of us got to the point we don't know our great-great-grandfather or grandmother. Now, that was for slavery, and some of it just we don't care about it. Because you can actually do some research and you might get way farther than you think. When it comes to the religion, that's extremely important. I'll give you an example. I'm going to share. Can I branch for a second?
Before you do, I want to,
Okay.
just real quick. For Mutawatir Hadith, it has to be from the Sahaba level, a mass group of...
From the Sahaba on down.
A mass group of Sahaba. It couldn't be like...
Right, even at the Sahaba, it has to be a mass group of the Sahaba. At every level.
I thought so.
Right? If it's ever a level where it's less than that, from after that time, it's not Mutawatir. Okay, we gotta stop this. All right. Any other questions? I want to share something with you.
Oh, one more about the level. So for each generation, you're saying that the scholars agree within that level. That's what makes it.
No, they all narrated. It wasn't agreement. They narrated the report. We're talking about reports.
Okay. Report, right.
So, for instance, when you study a hadith, right, you usually just see the hadith in Bukhari. And that's where you stop. But that hadith may be related in Muslim, may be related in Abu Dawood, may be related in Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Al-Bayhaqi, for instance, right? And in every one of those books, there's a different route from a different companion.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Right.
Right? It's not the same chain.
Okay.
So Imam Muslim relates with his chain, Imam Bukhari relates from his chain, Abu Dawood relates from his chain, and Tirmidhi. And when you collect all of them together, you're going to see Mutawatir.
Got you.
You follow?
Got you.
This.
It's like a tree with branches.
Right. So this is important because this is part of proof. Listen, show me your dalil. You don't even know what a dalil is. What are you talking about? Show you your dalil. No, seriously. This is show me your dalil. You don't even know what a dalil is. I just mentioned how many types of dalils that Tahawi was referring when he was talking about Abu Hanifa. How many types of dalil did I mention?
Four.
What are they? I didn't say consensus of the scholars. That's not what I said.
Yes, you did.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
No, I did not. Check your tape.
You sure did.
Play the safety man on you.
I said the
You just said
consensus of the companions.
no, you didn't.
You said scholars.
This is mutawatir. We want
Let me take that. Now we're learning why we should review.
Yes.
Right?
No doubt. Alhamdulillah.
Consensus of the companions. Why? Why is it consensus of the companions? It's easy.
Because they was first, and they wanted to get it from the Prophet.
Who are we talking about? Right. But who are we particularly talking about? Abu Hanifa. What's the level above Abu Hanifa?
Sahaba.
Sahaba. So when he's looking at consensus, what he's looking at, the consensus of who? The companions. All right, so was it a slip of tongue?
Yes.
You gotta check that
Yes, sir.
We got all these people. You talking about?
We got consensus.
tape. So I'm blaming I didn't have on my glasses.
Oh, wait, here it is. Quran, famous, well-known Sunnah,
No, she's gonna say the same thing we all said. You
and
said scholars.
consensus of the scholars.
So
And
fix that.
intellectual
Fix that. It should be consensus of the companions.
of the compare, okay.
Fix that, please. No, but this is particular. So it's important. Say companions, fix that.
Consensus of
Right.
companions, okay.
What do you learn from that?
Quran, branch.
Review and what?
When he learned
Sometimes
that
when you're learning
there was
online,
the-
no one's there to fix it.
Yeah.
So the teacher can make a mistake, slip of the tongue, it happens. He's not
approach to
responsible.
the Quran.
But you still took a slip of the tongue, and if you ain't around,
I said so.
can't fix it.
Consensus of the
Right.
companions and intellectual. That's what they use.
All right. So consensus here in this case, consensus can mean consensus of the scholar, which we commonly think that's probably was a slip of my tongue. In this particular thing, we're talking about the consensus of the companions. It's a big difference, right? The consensus of the companions. Okay. And what's the fifth proof? The fourth proof?
The
Intellectual proof.
So usually when someone say what's your dalil, what they're talking about,
Quran
The Quran,
and they're not specific of what type of sunnah, right?
no.
Because the sunnah is of different types,
Sunnah Mashhur we talking about.
right? So sometimes the evidence is not an evidence what you think it is for what you're using it for. It's not an evidence for that. So therefore, even though you're saying I have a hadith, that hadith is not a proof for what you're talking about. And you know we have a lot of people.
I was just saying.
I was talking to a person the other day. It was funny.
Yeah.
They was giving me some
At the
dalil,
approach to the Quran.
and I didn't say anything because I didn't feel like no long thing, right? But I'm like, that what you said has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about. But that's just, we're in the habit. We quote a hadith and we roll, right?
Yeah.
Now we want to get to a level, all of us, as we work through it,
That is a well-known famous. So,
that we, I'm going to come back to that. Thank you for taking good notes. Because I have slipped. Now I want to wear my glasses. But alhamdulillah, we done. Oh, man, Sheikh. Hold on one second. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I got a big class. Can you give my whole class assalamu alaikum?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I'm in the middle. Could you give them quick, Sheikh? I'll call you back. Could you give them some quick advice? Quick, just 5 minutes. I'm going to call you as soon as I get a break. Give me 1 second. But give quick advice. Quick advice real quick. We have a whole classroom full of people. Whatever comes to you, Sayyidi.
Okay.
Here you go.
Arabic or English?
English, they can't speak Arabic.
Okay, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, grant you to be firm and to be sincere to learn and to practice your learning. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your effort and keep you up to the, inshallah, the right way. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. And please remember me and remember all our great scholars and teachers always in your dua, as it is definitely based on their effort and sincerity that we are receiving this great blessing. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, we will start. Sayyidi, I'll call you right back as soon as we break.
So, Malika, we're going on break. Everybody get ready for...
This the book that we are studying in the Scattered Thoughts, the new book. Let's praise that book. We're out of the book, so they're all gone. This sheikh, he is a direct student of the author. So that is my teacher. His name is Sheikh Jamal al-Dhahabi. He studied and lived directly with this sheikh. And this sheikh was the student of the greatest muhaddith in the Sham areas in his generation, Sheikh Badruddin al-Hassani. So my chain to that sheikh, to that great muhaddith, is only from two people. And from this author, directly only one person. So as he's happened to call with that. But it is, this knowledge is the religion. So look well from whom? Barakallahu fikum. So that's, now you say levels? My level, the level of my teacher, the level of the teacher. We pray Asr, inshallah.
You said something beautiful.
All the sisters and stuff like that, we got some giveaways in the back. All the sisters who cook, they got first preference. That's the emails there, right? So we got some giveaways in the back. Everybody take one item and everything like that. And also we got books from Imam Naeem and some other stuff in the back that somebody want to buy, inshallah. So we'll be coming back shortly.
10 minutes.